May 20th, 1873. Levi Strauss receives a patent for blue jeans, and America discovers butts. Welcome to The Revisionists. I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm Zach Powers.
And we have a scorcher for you tonight. I don't know why I said it like that. We have a great guest, one of Denver's finest comics, one of my favorite people in town. Please welcome Jason Keys to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, Brian. I appreciate it, Zach.
Yeah, thank you for being
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you, Zach, for leaving on your camera so I could see your face when you react to the stupid thing I said.
I forgot that I left my camera on. You guys didn't, so it's really like just an uneven distribution of information.
Yeah,
I'm wearing a suit.
That's exactly what fucking Marx talked about.
I can't see it. I can barely see you. I have to peek over, so we're in the same boat.
I'm dressed extraordinarily professionally, I can assure you. You guys, I assume, are dressed either naked or in, like, I don't know, sweat jumpsuits.
I do not look like I'm at a happy hour right now, so I do not look like you.
Were you also going to say sweat jumpsuits?
Did you just turn off your camera?
I did just turn off my camera. I was uncomfortable with this invasion of privacy.
I mean, I don't know what's worse, the unequal thing or us to insist you turn your camera back on.
I probably wouldn't have noticed. You guys kind of snowed into yourself on that particular exchange.
Is that a verb? Is that a thing now?
Yeah.
Well, Zach, what are we doing here?
If you are new to the show, this is a comedy history podcast in which each episode we have a guest on, and one of the three of us recounts the real history of a person or event, and another person brings a fictitious bullshit bananas made up history of the same person or event, and at the end we vote on which becomes the real history going forward. And last episode we did one of my personal favorites, Olga of Kiev, a lady who took no shit and killed a lot of Drevlins.
Whole lot
of Drevlins, which sounds like an alien from Star Trek, but they were like real people. So
they were actual people.
Yeah, don't get that like, oh, it's okay because they're
okay because they're just Romulans.
No.
The soldiers on the Death Star, etc.
They did seem like dicks, but they were real people.
No, they ripped her husband in half with a tree.
Yeah,
so they weren't like angels.
But did he have it coming?
That's
dude. I mean, I feel like most likely, if he was a white straight male king in the 1900s, probably. I'm sure he was a dick to most people.
Not even the 900s.
I meant the 900s. Yeah.
Which were 1,000 times worse than the 1900s. Most likely.
Yes, most likely.
But
so he did have it coming.
Probably. We didn't really dig into him so much as we dug into Olga, who was just a pure
That doesn't
badass.
even sound right. You dug into Olga.
Yum.
But I'm happy to report that Janae Burris's alternate history did win, which was kind of like the real history of murder and, burning birds as weapons, but also included Olga being a transplant from, I think, Michigan. And also Gary, Indiana.
One of the Jackson 16 or 19, was it?
One of the Jackson kids. Okay.
Oh, yes. She was one of the Jackson 16, and she discovered the New World, even though she was born here, which is a little weird, and discovered the Earth was round. So basically anything that people erroneously attribute to Christopher Columbus.
Funny.
And, of course, some great Joe Jackson slams in there.
Sure.
Joe!
But, Zach, who are we talking about this episode?
Let me look it up, because I didn't have to do the research part. When I don't have to do the research part, the guy who said Dr. Livingston, I presume, but I don't know what his actual name was.
Henry Morton Stanley.
Henry Morton Stanley. He sounds like like a robber baron in the making.
That's very accurate, actually. This is actually going to be the first in a series of a few episodes on sort of 19th and 20th century colonialism, which is sort of our run-up to talking about World War One. So this is a person I've read about in a couple books, and I think he's sort of, I'll get into it, but he's sort of emblematic of a lot of the attitudes, I think, around that era of colonialism.
So racism is, I'm guessing, going to be maybe a theme?
Among,
maybe
like
a little.
capitalism.
Uh-huh.
And marketing
and
also.
And imperialism, gotcha. All the classics.
All the classics.
The things that built a lot of countries. But that hot take should tell you I'm doing the actual history this time. And Jason, you're doing the alternate?
Absolutely. I could not have done the real history on this white man.
Incredibly well documented. Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
But if we're all ready?
Yep.
All right. So John Rowlands was born in Wales in 1841. He never knew his father, and his mother left him behind with his grandparents, who really, really promptly took him to an orphanage because they were like, we couldn't deal with that. So at age 17, he's working as like a meat boy in Liverpool.
Oh, a meat boy.
A meat boy.
Like a boy who delivers meat, I guess.
Yeah.
Like a pizza delivery man in a porn.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the equivalent. Just before pizza was invented.
Yeah.
Would you like some meat?
It was an unsubtle age.
All right.
His life was later adapted into a popular indie game. There's a game called Super Meat Boy, in case you were curious.
I could have sworn you were about to make a BigSausagePizza.com joke.
No, I have more class than that. I just make indie game jokes that apparently nobody gets. It was a very popular game.
Sure. Anyway, so he's making a delivery to a ship when the captain's like, "Hey, do you want a job?" And he's like, "Okay." And so he ends up on a ship out of Liverpool, which is how he ends up living in New Orleans. And there he meets a man named Henry H. Stanley, who was a wealthy merchant. The story goes that Stanley was sitting out on his porch, and John Rowlands came up to him and asked him the question, "Do you need a boy, sir?" And was immediately hired.
Propositioned, huh?
Which is like, I guess, the style at the time of how children got jobs.
This is how you proposition an older gentleman. Do you need a boy?
Wow, yeah. I can't imagine my response if someone came up to me and said, "Do you need a boy, sir?" But I would immediately assume I was being filmed. I would look for a van. I would loudly say no, and I would be the one yelling "stranger danger."
He becomes his boy servant child. He's like basically
okay. So far, I'm just gonna recap. We've got in this story meat boys, and boy servant childs. I feel like the Marquis de Sade maybe has a co-authorship on this one.
Honestly, it gets just like so much darker that I feel like I had to put this stuff in up top just to be like, hey,
it's fun.
Sometimes things are fun. So he's basically adopted by Stanley. He takes his last name, and after he changes it, John Rowlands changes his name to Henry Morton Stanley. And after that, he starts like rewriting parts of his biography.
Like a Great Gatsby kind of thing.
Yeah, essentially. Like when he talks about leaving the orphanage, he just basically left. But he starts telling the story that he escaped over the wall after leading a rebellion of orphans against a very harsh supervisor.
Okay, I mean, I like his little Roald Dahl fictionalized version, but I prefer this orphanage with very lax checkout standards.
Just don't show back up.
Yeah, it's really more of a hostel at a certain point. It's like
Yeah, it's a flop
Airbnb.
house, basically.
Yeah.
Glad he's gone. I always wanted his bed. That's it.
And basically, people know that this story is full of shit. Like, after he becomes famous, a lot of the orphans who lived at the orphanage with him talked about how the person he said was like a harsh supervisor was like kind of just normal, and that Henry Stanley was basically a teacher's pet. But anyway, he winds up in New Orleans, and at the outbreak of the Civil War, he joins the Confederate Army. And he's captured at the Battle of Shiloh, and while he's in a prison camp, enlists in the Union Army. And then, like, 2 weeks later, he's discharged due to illness, and then he enlists in the Union Navy, which he eventually deserts. But he's believed to be the only person in the Civil War to have served in the Confederate Army, the Union Army, and the Union Navy. Because he doesn't... I don't know that he actually has beliefs, but anyway.
I do. I like his spineless sort of Hans Landa, Aaron
Very
Burr
cockroachy, right?
opportunism. Yeah.
A blank slate. Okay, I can
Start
write
over.
my will onto him. So at this point, he basically starts freelancing, like writing articles during the Indian Wars, and he attracts the attention of James G. Bennett, who was the editor of the New York Herald. And like they start writing articles together, and there's this like super ostentatious story where there's a man, Dr. David Livingstone, who was a British explorer who was exploring it's a dumb tautology, who got lost, like it was believed in Zanzibar, which is modern day Tanzania. And there's this huge quest to go find him. Zach?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Sorry, gonna edit that out. My computer was doing something. There was this quest to go find Livingston, and Stanley said that that the Herald editor, Bennett, I already forgot his name, telegraphed him and was like, I need to send you to Zanzibar. You must find Stanley. When it was like, probably a little less dramatic than that, because Stanley fabricated a lot of his books. Yeah. And like he was very focused on building his reputation and building his brand. He was like, he brought to colonialism the idea of like 20th century marketing almost, right, in a way.
I'm getting like a very, I feel like this is going to be another reference that falls on deaf ears, but a very Gilderoy Lockhart vibe off of this guy.
Oh, really? You think no one would get that reference?
You don't know Super Meat Boy. I don't know how...
I also have no idea what the fuck you were talking about.
Gilderoy Lockhart? Who is that?
He is a popular character in the popular book series Harry Potter. He's not a popular character.
Popular.
He's a character.
Very.
He features heavily in only one book.
Like, look, anything below like Draco Malfoy or maybe a couple professors, I will not understand.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're depriving yourself, my friend.
So Stanley heads to Tanzania with about 190, 200 people, and his quest lasts 8 months. He like very famously finds Dr. Livingstone, and in what is probably another fabricated incident, like his first words to him are Dr. Livingstone, I presume, which is like fucking the most British thing. But all the other Europeans on the expedition died, and no one ever bothered to interview like the Africans that they had forced to like be their porters and like carry shit and do all the other work for them. So Stanley's account of the journey is the only thing that survives.
How like, convenient.
Yeah, right. Livingstone, and this is at a time during like British exploration in particular, that Britain was like very heavily condemning the Arabs for engaging in the slave trade, but not necessarily Spain or because this is after the Civil War, and Britain had already abolished slavery, but not necessarily condemning like Spain or Portugal or other Europeans, or like Brazil, which had the largest slave population in the world. No one in Britain ever condemned them, but they would just say we need to teach the Arabs a lesson, and not because they're bad for doing exactly what we're doing. Sorry, I hate this guy.
I hate him.
I probably shouldn't reveal bias, but later he goes on another quest through Central Africa. He traverses Africa from east to west. While there, he maps a river, trying to find the source of the Nile, which he eventually discovers this is actually the Congo River, which his expedition there left with 356 people, and only 114 returned. Like, he killed at least hundreds of people, like no one ever counted. He did write in his journal at one point during the journey, quote, "We have attacked and destroyed 28 large towns and 3 or 4 score small villages." He was very thin-skinned. He once opened fire on a group of people at a riverbank because he thought they were making fun of him.
Oh.
Yeah.
Were they?
I mean,
they keep clicking at me. What is going on?
You all saw that. They all
pull out your rifles.
They gave me a look. And like at this point in the journey, the only like African voices were recorded by Stanley himself. And a lot of, again, they had a large contingent of Africans forced into being porters, because the way they would navigate the river is...
Just don't want to say slavery, do you?
Well, no, it is slavery. But like portage, just like what they were doing is so...
The act of portage, yeah.
Brutal.
I get it.
Yeah.
Still slaves.
No, still slaves. No, definitely slavery. Like the boat they were forced to carry, like the largest one was about 54 feet long and weighed about 3 tons. And when people were sick, with smallpox or fatigue, he wouldn't let them rest or leave them behind. He would make them carry until they dropped, basically. So he campaigned to explore more of the Congo, but no European country would take him up on it until King Leopold II of Belgium said he would support him. So Leopold sends him up the Congo to build roads and build trading posts for what was called euphemistically the Congo Free State, which was run entirely by a private corporation owned by King Leopold, which he ran for, I think, like 30 years, basically. But Stanley built a lot of the infrastructure for that. And he tricked, like the treaty he gave to the local chiefs, which a lot of people who not familiar with written word, let alone English or legalese, basically said they would give the chiefs 1 piece of cloth a month in exchange for all of their land and the ability to enslave their people. And so, like, in the Congo, like, there was no census before 1924, so it's hard to estimate, like, how many people died. But most academics agree that the population was reduced by, quote, at least half, which based on the 1924 census is about 10 million people. And
wow.
so after he left that, he leads another expedition to the British were saying that their governor in Sudan, a man named Emin Pasha, was under attack by an Islamic insurgent group, which turned out to not be so true as the other thing. So again, 389 people go with him. More than half die. Like, it didn't need to happen. A practice that happened in the Congo that happened again here is that they would hold people's family hostage to get them to work for them. And sorry, what did that say? Another thing that he may have been responsible for was introducing what's called sleeping sickness, which is a parasite, basically, that wasn't like native to the area, so no one had any immunity to it.
What a fun character you've picked today,
yeah.
Brian. Well, we had slavery, but maybe we didn't have genocide. Oh, we did have some genocide. Well, at least they didn't do the full Lord's Resistance Army. Oh, they did actually do that. Yes. Well, at least he didn't introduce a sickness that killed. Oh, wait, again, that also. But maybe there wasn't any Islamophobia. Oh, wait, there's also a little bit of Islamophobia.
I mean, I think a little bit is very generous on your part. So after this, he's elected to Parliament.
Absolutely. As a liberal.
To be fair, at the time, that was a pretty solid... He didn't, lie about any of that to the British people. They probably read the record straight and were like, that represents Britain at the time.
Yeah. There's a horrifying
and
story.
And to be frank, because Theresa May is the Prime Minister now, maybe it represents Britain now pretty well, too.
Theresa May slam. There's a horror, it's all a very horrible story, but there's a particular one where a man on his expedition, Jameson, who was a member of the Jameson whiskey family, who apparently
Can I just imagine? Please tell me this is a story where this man sees something unbelievable while he is drunk, looks at his bottle, and then throws it over his shoulder in a vow to stop drinking because of how unbelievable this sight is.
No, it's more a story of me reading this and doing that thing than him actually doing it.
So I'm glad that at least somebody got to throw their bottle over their shoulder in disbelief. As we all know, Brian is extremely drunk when he does his research.
Yeah, of course. But no more, not after this. Basically, he forced a group of people to eat an 11-year-old girl so he could document how it was done.
Well,
so
that happened.
Yeah.
I mean, no comment.
Yeah, there's literally nothing to follow that with. That's why I put it at the end.
The revisionist does not condone eating children?
What about adults?
Is this a PSA? That depends. That's situational.
I mean, Craigslist post, if you're both consenting.
I suppose.
So Stanley died in 1904. Sadly, in his bed, surrounded by family.
Was the bed on fire?
Nope.
And the family also on fire?
Death. I didn't do anything wrong. Peace.
Yeah. I should say a lot of my source material for my version of events came from the book King Leopold's Ghost by Adam Hochschild. And I reverted to that book, which I think is a great book and highly recommend, because the Wikipedia article on Stanley is clearly written by someone who's kind of an apologist for him.
Okay.
Basically, they make the argument that, well, he fabricated a lot of his stuff in the book, so we don't know if he necessarily killed all the people he says he killed in his own book. which I just I can't even process that. But yeah, so that's, like I said, to me, Henry Morton Stanley represents a lot of this era of colonialism, in that it's the same brutality that was applied to the earlier colonial era, like the 15th century, 16th, 17th century.
Mm-hmm. And they just kind of put it under a nicer name and a more...
I mean, if it's not broke.
A bunch of lies on top of it, like a kind of a mythological story about finding Dr. Livingstone, but it's underneath the same old horrible shit that had been going on for centuries.
Yeah. Also, I just realized I still file this podcast under comedy every time, even when it's not at all appropriate.
Yeah, you're going to put a trigger warning at the beginning of this. It's going to say, trigger warning everything. All of them. Oh, wait, not spiders. Somehow we skipped spiders.
Oh, yeah, there were probably spiders.
Oh, yeah, okay, now we can add it.
Yeah, now I'm seriously just reconsidering World War I, even, too.
No. Trenchfoot will be a delightful coffee. We'll come up with, like, a fun new way to rebrand Trenchfoot. It's the hottest new dance craze.
Yeah, it's the dampest dance craze.
Mm-hmm. See, we're already having fun.
Oh, God damn it. Well, Jason, if you're ready with the alternate history.
If I'm ready. Oh, man. Okay, let's see how this goes. Yeah, we'll see. This is the alternate version, actually the true story. Henry Morton Stanley, born on March 23rd in the year 2471. Was the famous time traveler sent back from the future to change the tide of the Dark War, known to have decimated the European ancestry. No one knows the beginning of the war, but it was primarily the European Confederation versus the African Consortium. Being one of the last hopes, utilizing the technology of time travel, the European Confederation in secret deployed agents to go to specific events in history with a concerted effort to alter the timeline to ensure that the European Confederation would not be annihilated.
That already sounds very European.
Yeah, it does.
Henry Morton Stanley, given name, was Henry Hank Stanley Morton. The youngest
his imperialism is now temporal in nature. It's like if Doctor Who was actually a traditional British person, where he would just go to various places and take over and introduce disease.
Oh, man. Here's a disease from the future.
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right. Hank Stanley Morton, the youngest child of Jonathan Morton, distant relative of the founder of Morton Salt. Mm-hmm. His mother died in 2475 when Hank was a young boy in an attack of a major weapons facility located in what is present-day Geneva, where his mother was a respected engineer working with a rare element called trillium found deep within Africa.
Oh, I was hoping for unobtainium.
I thought about unobtainium, but
I was going for vibranium.
Does it vibranium?
But yeah. You have more. You're a better writer than James Cameron. Is the problem?
Trillium was known for its ability to create powerful weapons that could destroy large civilizations with very little radiation output that would immediately make the land livable, which would have been an important turning point in the Dark War by allowing the European Confederation to burrow deeper into the enemy territory. However, after the attack, the last remaining elements of trillium were lost. It was a victory for the enemy. Hank's early years were spent with his father, a respected lieutenant in the war. As all young boys during this militarized era, he received military instruction, learning all the major battles in history and tactics used to win. However, it was during Hank's instruction at the age of 19, during officer commissioning school, that he met the eccentric military physicist John Bond Williams. I don't know where that came from.
Also, I'm sorry, I was just quickly Googling trillium to make sure it was or was not real.
Oh, really? Is it real?
No, it's just like a... But, I mean, yes.
Yes,
Wait,
something.
I'll edit that part out. Sorry.
So, I'm just John Bon Williams, I'm assuming, is somehow related to both John Bon Jovi and John Williams, composer of the Star Trek score, Star Wars, I should say.
It's all combined. You got it.
Gotcha.
All right.
Maybe they made. This is the future.
This is the future. This is the future. This encounter is the one that has rewritten every timeline since then. Mr. Williams was creating a weapon in secret, which was no secret to anybody at the school. But what? Sorry. But what was this weapon? Hank later recounted that it was on a dare that he should sneak into the restricted area to see the weapon. He was able to sneak into the facility and make it all the way to the weapon. Upon seeing the weapon, he noticed it was not an explosive device. As he was confused and trying to ascertain the true use of the weapon, Mr. Williams walked in and said, "Beautiful, isn't she?" Hank replied, "Yes, but I have no idea what this is. I've never seen anything like it. What is it?" What is it? That is the question that changed the entire timeline.
Suspense.
Mr. Williams then told Hank of the opportunity to change the tide in the war, not in anything that was done during the present, but specific points in history that have affected the outcome of the current timeline. Williams explained to Hank that they have already begun experimenting and noticed minimal changes as the timeline will correct itself over time. But that if they were able to send back exactly 316 people at different points in history, they could overcome every attempt of the natural order to restore itself. While this seemed insane, Williams, a blatant homosexual, preyed on Hank's young mind and used sexual favors to gain the confidence of the young man and eventually convince Hank to be one of the 316. Before traveling back in time, his mission had to be set out. He would need supplies, influence in the past, and need to be in certain places at certain times to ensure the success of his mission. While it was a one-way trip, he needed to coordinate with different individuals that are set up in different fronts of the war. The only downside to this temporal jump into the past was only your consciousness could go back. Hank, knowing the risks, felt the needs of the many outweighed the needs of the few, and began his journey to 1857, where he took over the consciousness of a teenage orphan by the name of John Rowlands. John Rowlands. Whatever it is. I don't know.
Of course, if you're going to take over someone's body, make sure it's a teenage orphan.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody can know the difference. After
There's
subjugating
a reason the protagonist in every popular book or movie is a teenaged orphans. They have the best prospects for heroism and fortune.
Yeah, things always work out well.
For teen orphans. That's it.
Yeah, teen
Harry
orphans.
Potter.
Oliver Twist. Come on. Everybody wants to be a teen orphan.
Teens, kill your parents.
Kill them. Be an orphan.
That's why that popular magazine, Teen Orphan, sells so well.
Orphan fancy, yeah.
Teen Orphan.
Orphan Beat.
When's the new issue of Teen Orphan coming out, Headmaster?
You know, I said Orphan Beat, and I immediately felt like it was about abusing orphans. It was written for cruel orphanage owners.
Of course, Orphan Politic, which had a lot of quizzes for orphans.
Turn to page 63 where you'll see how to build your own dungeon.
My favorite, of course, Orphan Pravda.
Yeah, of course.
Orphan Libs. All right. After subjugating the consciousness of John Rowlands, he took it upon himself to begin making plans to travel to New Orleans to meet with James Speake, another of the 316 that had been set up in the instrumental assault on the past. Hank continued his life in the South, enlisting in the U.S. Civil War, beginning on the side of the Confederacy. But due to the flux in the temporal timeline, he received word that a Confederacy victory would just strengthen the numbers of those of African descent in the American front on the Dark War. The future explained that they would need to destroy those of African descent in a different way. He then switched allegiance and fought for the Union, also gaining valuable experience in the maritime Army of the U.S. Navy, whatever. All right.
Some sort of boat
Some
army.
sort of boat army.
Okay.
Oh, man. He did other various small things, but before long, he trekked back to Europe, where he would be most influential in his assault on the timeline. It was under the guise of journalism that he became able to infiltrate more areas with funding. Now, the accounts are correct, and his journal entries were often exaggerated or tempered depending on the situation. He was known for his secrecy and enigmatic relationship to the natives of Africa. His most famous of expeditions began because of the Dark War, because the Dark War was lost, because in the timeline, the Europeans tried to take the Congo by force, but was met with tons of opposition and never were able to see the ins and outs of that area. This would prove costly, as this is where the African Middle Eastern resistance to the hegemony that is Western civilization was born and rooted. His mission under the guise of finding Dr. David Livingstone, which was perfect for his chance to completely explore the African stronghold before it began to take shape. It was determined that if the African Consortium found the Trillium as planned in 2238, it would spell the death of the European race. It would take that long for the technology to be able to detect that element. His historic encounter finding Livingstone was all by happenstance. He was studying the terrain, looking at where Trillium was first mined. Caught up in following the trail, he stumbled across a small tribe. He was completely taken aback when he stumbled into an encampment and immediately noticed a white man. Immediately he remembered why he was there and took a guess. Dr. Livingstone, I presume? And the rest is a new timeline history. After gathering this information and submitting an encrypted message back to the future in the form of a book entitled How I Found Livingstone, Travels, Adventures, and Discoveries in Central Africa.
Yeah, his book titles. What the fuck?
Like, they're just completely long-winded, no succinctness to them at all. He received orders again to work directly with King Leopold II of Belgium.
Also, I feel like that book title is kind of a spoiler. Like, maybe save the part about finding Livingstone until you're actually reading the book.
Yeah.
Right.
Searching for Livingstone. It's like a prequel to Searching for Sugarman.
Or Bobby Fischer.
Yeah. Or Bobby Fischer. Searching for people is great. Finding people is boring. That's why I'm a book executive.
Don't give me this trash, Stanley. Oh, man. So he received orders again to work directly with King Leopold II of Belgium to help claim the Congo for him. While Leopold wasn't part of the 316, he was an instrumental pawn in the next phase of destruction of the African threat in the Dark War. This was a much more difficult task and one that completely tarnished his name. But who cares about a name when you're at war? He did what he had to do. He was there to offer relief to Emin Pasha, but we know it was all under the guise of controlling a territory. He used this time to falsify claims of agreement by the natives to allow the British Empire to have legitimacy to his rule in the land. This was a major blow in the success of his war over 4 centuries into the future, as the British Empire became stronger and eventually created a new world order, the European Confederation, that would lead them into battle against the African Consortium. So he then died on Earth in the same timeline, a hero and all that good jazz and all that type of stuff. His efforts have been instrumental in the Dark War. The 316 are still around to this day, hiding in plain sight. Trillium has already been discovered thanks to the expeditions of Hank. It is part of the God particle, which you may know as the Higgs boson particle that activates as the Higgs boson particle that activates the element to create massive amounts of power. CERN is the site of this, and the tests.
It's gonna be real Da Vinci Code. You're gonna hear the whole stretch.
Gotta wrap it up. CERN is the site of this, and the tests that they are running currently are helping them to create a temporal gateway between the future and the past. This is helping to turn the tide and the destruction of the African Consortium. The 316 are those that have created the phenomenon of the Mandela effect. All right, that's it.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah. When you said you weren't sure how that would go, I was expecting like an actually like good sci-fi,
yeah,
like novella.
Yeah. who knows? However that went, but that was fun. That was fun. I had a great time writing that.
Yeah. So Zach, you're going to be judging this episode, but before we do that, I just want to say real quick that you can always ask us a question or leave us a comment on revisionistpodcast.com. And follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Also, I'm going to edit that out. Also, write a review of the podcast on iTunes, which is crazy helpful. And our Patreon page is still up, and I want to thank two people for donating, Jen Colick and Jenny Vaughn for donating. Be sure to check out our sweet reward options. And I guess the other announcement is that we are sort of in the very early stages of building a podcast network with a few other shows around Denver. We're still ironing out the details, so I don't want to plug the network specifically yet, but the other shows involved are great. Changing Denver is on it, which just won the Westward Award, Best of Denver for Best Podcast. Mm-hmm. Left Hand Right Brain with JD Lopez. Mm-hmm. Discover Weekly, which is a great music podcast. Real Nerds, which is about movies, and Beyond the Trope. All really great shows, so check them out. Jason, also you have shows all around town.
Absolutely, all around town. And, nothing to plug right now, though.
Yeah. But if you get a chance to see him, go do it. So fantastic. One of my favorites. And then as for me, Nighttime Tonight at Deer Pile is always the third Thursday of every month. So that's coming up June 15th. And then May 23rd through 30th, I'll be in Minneapolis. And I got some shows lined up there. New Comic Book Day, Real Shit at the Comedy Corner Underground, and Boy Kisses, and whatever else falls into place. So if you live in the Twin Cities, come check that shit out. Okay, Zach. It's Judgment Day.
Oh, very appropriate for the alternate story, actually.
Yeah, I think that's what put it in my brain.
That did have something to do with it.
Here's what I'm thinking. First of all, obviously this person is a horrible monster.
Yep.
Both timelines.
Both timelines, yeah. He's roughly this. He's an equivalently horrible monster in both, maybe even a little worse in the alternate.
I didn't think that would actually be possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of right.
So, I am a little nervous in the alternate that I'm going to imply that eventually there's going to be a race war. But I like the amount. I thought it was a really well crafted story. I like the effort that went into it. And since I'm sure one constant of upcoming stories that we're going to cover in this is going to be, as it always is, horrible imperialist, racist white dudes, I like the idea of having this 316 that can weave in and out as we go. It's been too long since we've had a good thing that can pop up in other stories, and I think just to have that little tool in our tool bag, that extra bit of flair, I think I will go with the alternate history this time.
Woohoo!
Yeah, hell yeah.
Awesome.
Jason, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Yay. Zach, thank you as always.
Yeah, of course.
For everyone here at the Revisionists, I didn't even leave myself space to edit that out. I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm Zach Powers.
Have a good time.